Real JP Multimedia, proud sponsor of the Nerdball podcast. Here to help you with all things audio, video, graphics, photo, web design. From weddings to real estate, commercial business to private use, we offer a big variety of services for almost any budget. And if we can't do it, we will find someone who can. Find us at realjp.com. That's REELJP.com. Real JP Multimedia.
Hi, my name is Rick Rettig, and this is the Nerdball podcast.
This is the Nerdball podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
Thanks, Rick, for coming on the podcast on kind of a short notice. I've been doing that lately. A lot of people get text from me and then they hop on. So that's good. Thank you.
Well, this is fun. No, I'm excited to do it. This is my second ever podcast. And I woke up this morning thinking it was going to be a pretty boring day since baseball got rained out. But as it turns out, I'm on the #1 podcast in Perrysburg. So this all worked out just fine.
Well, thanks. Yeah, my son was supposed to try out for 12U today, and that got pushed to tomorrow. So
I see. Yeah. Tough day for baseball, but next few days, so long as the smoke stays a little north of us from Canada, we should be okay for baseball, hopefully.
Yeah. He was nervous. Well, he was a little nervous about it. Just he didn't make it this past season, but he was in his rec league championship game last night and ended up losing. But he pitched, and as a dad, I'm also the scorekeeper and, yell encouraging things from the dugout from time to time. But his coach would look at me as like, hey, when do you want me to take him out? I go, he's looking pretty tired. His pitch count's getting kind of up there. And then part of me was like, well, I kind of want him to be able to, do tryouts too. But I told my wife, I go, this is first. He has to do well for his team now, and then we'll deal with it later. And luckily he gets another day of recovery before tryouts. So
that's good. That all ended up working out well then. So that's good.
Yeah. The first question I always ask everybody, we're going to get to eventually, but I have umpire questions for you because I used to umpire.
Oh boy.
And
you're going to put me on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to talk through some stuff because there's some stuff that I always like, I hope this doesn't happen type of deals to me. Yeah. And, but we'll get to that. But the first question I want to ask you is, what's something you've been nerding out about lately? Something you're super into, if it's something that just started or something you've been doing since you were a kid. It just can't be about your work. So anything, it kind of gets you, the questions kind of get you away from work or just something that you really enjoy doing.
Well, I feel comfortable being on the Nerdball podcast because when I say online chess, it doesn't sound much more nerdy than that. I've so gotten into online chess and I'll play maybe about, and again, they're only at most 20-minute games.
Okay.
And so I've gotten into that. I'm not necessarily very good. Looking at some of those rankings, I think to myself, how in the world do you get that high? That's crazy high. But I enjoy it, and I'll usually get in about 3 games. It's summertime, so I have a little more opportunity to play. I get in 3 or 4 games a day, and so it keeps my mind fresh. And I'm getting into my mid-50s, so now it's keep that brain working, right?
Yeah.
So,
Is chess something you were always into?
You know what? I didn't necessarily really pick up chess until after I was out of college and started playing a little bit here and there. But again, you didn't have online at that point. And so I always enjoyed it. But when you said recently something I've been geeked up about, really, I think in this past year, I've just gotten on a chess craze. So, so I'm geeking out playing chess. So
do you play not online too, like with family? Will you play it? Or is it not as fun?
It's actually, well, this is the one game that I think I can still beat my son at pretty consistently. So he doesn't play me very much, but he would probably be the most solid competition in the house. He plays too. So, and he would say he could beat me, but not that much.
That's something I never got into that. My kids will play and they'll ask me to play like, I think my in-laws have like one of those big rugs that are, it's a chessboard. So they have the giant chess pieces or whatever. And, my kids were asked to play that. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never played it. I've never, I guess you move it around and you try to hop the other ones and that's about it. So,
I haven't gotten to the point yet that I'm actually looking at, okay, what are the strategies here? What's each piece supposed? I know what each piece is
Mhm.
supposed to do, the basics, but what are the actual strategies of becoming a better chess player? I haven't gone that route yet, but I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I'm getting closer and closer.
You'll know it's towards the end of summer when you start finding videos on YouTube on what each piece. You're like, man,
Yeah.
it's time to
Oh
get back
yeah.
to school.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other part of my thing that I've been geeking out about here recently is doing personal finance things. I'm changing from the counseling department back into the classroom
Oh,
for next year, which is a change of 24 years in being in
yeah.
the counseling department. I'm moving into the teaching ranks now and teaching personal finance. And I am so stoked about that because everything in personal finance really is life planning stuff. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
and so since the governor changed the law, and now it's a requirement for the class of 2026 and beyond to have one semester of personal finance.
Mhm.
It forced Perrysburg and a lot of schools around the state to add another teaching position. And so I applied for it and they decided I'm the person for the job. So, but
Yeah.
when I looked at the curriculum, it was like, well, this is all life planning stuff, you
Mhm.
know? And so I'm excited about changing gears. And at 53 going on 54, this is a fairly good change. I'm still a part of the schools, but learning all the things you have to learn to have a good class, that's really important. So I've been doing a lot of that over the summertime too.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Like it's to have some sort of personal finance, some sort of knowledge, even if it's. I mean, they're forcing kids to take it. Really, like right, you have to take
Hmm.
this, but
Yeah.
there's is going to be something that they remember or that they can take from it, or maybe they go into it thinking like, well, I have to take this class, but then afterward, like, man, I'm really glad I took that class.
Yeah, I hope that's the case.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of students, we consider ourselves like math students or history students or English students, and the other subjects were like, why does this apply to me? Because I'm
yeah.
not that type of a student. Well, if you're living, this applies to you. So
Yeah.
if you don't find application in this class, you ain't finding it anywhere, man. We need to have a little bit more serious discussion because it should be a highly relevant class. So it's my job to make sure they understand the relevance of what we're covering. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
I enjoy budgeting, so I do budgeting at my house and for our household. And with the Metro Parks, I'm in charge of our budget for the park that I manage, right? And
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, it's a lot easier, a lot easier to spend somebody else's money.
you
but
know, you
but
know,
it's easier because I have one of my budget lines and the parks is a small equipment budget, so it's like
mhm,
push mowers or weed whips or blowers and that kind of
yeah.
stuff. And my staff kept telling me like, hey, we need this, we need that. And I showed up next day with 2 new weed whips and a backpack blower, and like, man, that was quick. I'm like, well, again, it's easy to spend my money, but I still stayed within that budget of
Yeah.
that for that line item.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And made your employees happy. So that's
yeah.
you became a hero for the day. No donuts the next day. I'd be bringing donuts. Made my
No,
job easier.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I just stopped. Speaking of donuts, I just stopped at Papa Moose's Donuts in Rossford. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I've heard
Uh,
of it. I've heard
yeah,
of it. Yeah.
there's all kinds of donuts there, and I mean they got regular flavored donuts, but they also have really crazy flavors. And
Hmm.
so I got a dozen of those today, and my kids and my wife and myself enjoyed those. But
I try to
yeah,
stay away from those places because I will end up 300 pounds. I mean, I love donuts so much.
yeah,
I don't get them very often,
okay.
but oh my goodness gracious, I will pound. If we get donuts, I'm having three. I'm not having one. I'm
What's your
having three.
What's your
And I have to
favorite?
push away four. So because I'll go there, you know.
Yeah. What's your favorite donut or kind of donut?
Um, you know what? One of the cinnamon twirl things
Okay,
where it's like a cinnamon, it's not a donut because it doesn't
it's
have a hole.
longer, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's usually like a circle, and
Okay.
it's like a spunny circle with cinnamon and a little vanilla on top of there. So
Okay.
yeah, that's good stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
coffee and a nice sized donut. Oh, now you got me started. I might have this for dinner.
They're good, and
Yeah,
the guy was nice to talk to. But
yeah,
yeah. So I usually start um with I know you were my counselor when I was in high school,
yeah. Way
which
back when.
yeah, because you said you've been doing it for 24 years. I'm like, okay, so
Yeah.
he was as I do this podcast and talk to people that I knew or were my teachers or part of my adults that I knew when I was in high school, and then I realized like, man, a lot of them were starting or shortly before I got there, and it's
Mhm.
cool. Like I guess you don't pay attention to that because when you're a student, everyone's a billion years old, right?
Yeah.
You're just
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
just the
yeah.
way it is, right?
Yep.
But hearing you say 24 years, I'm out of school 20 years, so you were only in there for 4 years before I even got there.
Right.
So yeah.
And I taught at Wasion High School. I actually started in education in 1993.
Okay.
I taught at Wasion during their heyday in sports, where everybody was going to the state championship. We had football going to states, and baseball going to states, and girls basketball winning states, boys basketball going
Yeah.
state runners up. So I was there during all that time. So my biggest challenge was, okay, we're off again. How am I going to get everybody back on track, because
Oh
we don't
yeah.
have school again? So, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. So taught there for 5 years. I was an English teacher,
Oh
and then back to school for 1 year. I jumped off the bridge, went right back into graduate school, did a 2-year program in 1 year's time because I didn't want to stay out of the schools.
wow.
So the school year coming up will be year 30 as a counselor or a teacher, but really I've been a part of education for 30 years now. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
My sixth grade teacher lived in Wasion, and her boys
Oh,
went there, and I remember her talking about them playing football and being really good
mhm.
and everything. And that's funny, yeah, because I didn't realize, as a sixth grader, you just know your world, so I didn't realize they were that good back then with all the sports.
Oh boy, there was something in the water.
Yeah.
But the amount of athletes going through that school was pretty fantastic. And of course, the Griggs girls, well, I was a teacher at Wasion when their mom and dad were at Wasion, and
Oh, okay.
their mom was pretty, fantastic athlete in her own right. She's in the Hall of Fame in Wasion for track. She's incredibly fast. Still runs. I see her running up and
Yeah.
down my street. So the Griggs family, they're pretty special.
Yeah.
His uncle was a running back for the Indianapolis Colts. Well, it was Baltimore back
Baltimore.
then, the
Yeah.
Baltimore Colts, and played with Johnny Unitas.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty great story. So, and
Yeah.
his mom, I guess, was in the Corey Griggs's mom was in the Olympic swimming program. So it's a good DNA strand
Yeah, I
there.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you always been in? Did you grow up here in Northwest Ohio?
Yeah. I grew up in a really small town called Okolona.
Okay.
And that's midway in between Napoleon and Defiance. Our house was maybe about 3/4 of a mile away from the Defiance Henry County line. So grew up in a cornfield or a bean field in my backyard, depending on the year.
Yeah,
Um,
that name sounds familiar. Because my grandparents lived in Hamler.
oh, sure, yeah, Southern
So
Henry County, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
so I because we'd always go to Defiance and Napoleon, but I remember when you said it, I remember seeing it on green signs when you're driving.
Yeah, yeah. Fun in my town was hitting the baseball, throwing it up and hitting the baseball and hitting it to Defiance County and back. So I would, on the way there, see how many times it would take me to hit, and then try to reduce the amount of times, the amount
Oh,
of hits to get back to my property line. So
yeah,
that was fun in my hometown. Spend hours out in the cornfield or the bean field
yeah,
until the plants grew too high. And I'm sure Norm didn't like me roaming around in his corn and bean field. Probably did some damage to the crops, but it's what it is. That's what you
yeah,
do in a small town. Yeah.
yeah. My parents used to talk about, because they went to Patrick Henry. They used to talk about how they would
Mhm.
just drive and park alongside of the road and listen to music and hang out just
Yeah.
alongside of the country road.
Now, when did your parents go to Patrick Henry?
So when did they go? My I don't know exactly. My dad was born in 59 and my mom was born in 58, or
Okay.
opposite, one of those.
Okay.
But my mom had younger brothers that also went there too.
Okay.
But yeah, they I think they both went all 4 years. I know my dad moved up
Okay.
here when he was 15. And
Okay.
then went there. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Most of my relatives are actually in that area. So who knows? We could be related somehow.
Maybe, yeah.
In a small county like Henry County, don't say no. It could happen. It could be a thing. So
Well,
yeah.
there is several, like whenever I mention it or something, there have been people that I've known for a while they're like, oh yeah, my grandparents live there, or my uncle lives in Hamler or out that way or whatever. So it makes it seem a lot bigger than it is. I'll tell you what, as a little kid going there though, I loved going to my grandparents' house. It was fun and everything, but there was really nothing to do in Hamler.
No.
We would go get it was pretty exciting when the gas station also got pizza, so we were excited there. There was we'd go
was that Just Stop? Was that the name of the place?
I think so, yeah.
Well, they sponsored our softball team. That's how I know that. Yeah. So
I'd go play basketball at the I don't know what it was, but it was that big like a big barn thing out there by the railroad tracks, and that's where they would have Hamler Fest there.
Yeah, I used to broadcast from Hamler Fest.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I worked for WNDH Napoleon. That was my first tax-paying job.
Oh,
when I was 16 years old, it was a summertime, and I'm driving along in front of the station. I know I'm going into broadcasting.
Yeah.
I've been, since I was 8 years old with my own tape recorder, broadcasting the baseball games on television, right? So I knew I was always going into that, and so I looked up at the radio station, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and maybe find a time for an interview. So I went up and I talked to the secretary, wondering if I could possibly interview if they had any jobs. And she said, hold on 1 second. And so she went back and she spoke with Bob McClymonds, the general manager. And she goes, you can go right back now. And I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. And I said, I'm not really dressed or prepared for an interview. She goes, don't worry about it. So I went back, and Bob McClymonds was this classic FM DJ voice. I mean, deep, resonant. And I sat down and he said, Richard. And I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was in trouble. He used my first full name. And so I sat down and he was speaking to me about why he wanted to get into radio. And we were talking for a little bit, and he goes, okay, follow me. And we go back into the production studio, and he says, go ahead and sit down, put the earphones on. And so he leaves, and he comes back, and he has, back then they had the AP wire that would just, produce stories, the old school.
Yeah.
And he did what's called a rip and read, where you go ahead, you go to the AP wire, choose your story, rip it, and like it's a news flash, and you're ready to go. Okay. So he presented the scenario. This is hot, late breaking news. You've never read it before. I'm handing it to you. You're going to break into regular scheduled program. You're going to read it in a way that grabs the attention of the listener. Yeah. He said, okay, go. So, I mean, I'm trying to keep my pants on here. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Now, outside, I'm trying to play it really cool, right? Inside, I'm freaking out. So I went through and I actually read it pretty well. And he said, okay, thank you very much. And he gave me a book to read about broadcasting goes. I think you'll enjoy this. And so didn't hear anything. A little bit better than a week goes by. It's on a Sunday, and he gives me a call, and he said, Rick, this is Bob McClymonds. And I said, oh, hi, Mr. McClymonds. How are you? And he goes, call me Bob. And all right. So, and he said, what are you doing next Sunday? And I said, going to church. And he goes, and he paused. He went, after church. And I was like, I don't think I have anything planned other than watching football. And he said, well, if you would like a job, we need somebody for the Sunday afternoon shift, and you'll be trained on that day, and then the Sunday afternoon shift will be yours. And so that was my introduction into broadcasting, and I got to broadcast for 5 years, and broadcast then on to Bowling Green when I was there. Broadcast from the Hamler Fest, and so things really started to get cooking with broadcasting. So yeah, it was a lot of fun being a broadcaster.
What besides, I mean, baseball was the story you told about hitting the baseball over the county line, and that I mean, is that what got you into like, hey, I want to sound just like these radio guys? Because I know that's, even now as almost a 40-year-old, there's nothing better than listening to Tom Hamilton call a Guardians game. I love Tom Hamilton.
Yeah,
but is there something? I'm assuming it was somebody that you listened to. You're like, hey, I want to do that.
Sure, Ernie Harwell, the voice of the Tigers, the other Georgia Peach. He was somebody I always listened to. I was that little kid with the radio underneath the covers listening when I was supposed to be sleeping, and of course loved listening to Tiger baseball. But I was always a yapper, if you couldn't tell. I was the little kid that at the restaurant would be 5 tables over asking people about their meal. That was me. I don't remember that, but that's what my parents said. They had to keep an eye on me because I would disappear and go start talking to somebody. So how I didn't get like kidnapped or something is beyond me, but apparently I would do that all the time. going to go.
They didn't bribe you with the right. It wasn't candy. It was like, hey, I got this microphone. You want to?
No, I just go ahead and start talking to people. So
Wow.
we go, shopping, and I would be getting lost in the middle of the clothes rack, right? Go hide. And then I'd end up going talking to the cashier as she's checking people out. So I'd always be drawn to that. So
Yeah.
I guess, being around people and speaking with people, interviewing people, I've always loved doing that. And so it just so happened that and I wasn't even going to go to college. I was going to Specs Powered Broadcasting School in Detroit, Michigan. And then there were some colleges that were interested in me in baseball. And so that kind of turned things to, well, maybe I go to college, because I wasn't a college bound student. I had a 2.3 grade point average at the end of my sophomore year. I had a lot of friends with 3.0s. I was a 3.0.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit of a goofball, but my old speech and debate coach, who was also my football coach, said, when are you going to stop screwing up your life? That was where his exact words. And he told me I was going to join speech and debate, and I did. And the next semester I had a 3.6 and some direction in my life. And so it's amazing how that changes your world. And then once I got into college and got into the major after 1 year, I thought, well, I can do the broadcasting job, but I need a backup. And so my backup was education. And then the more I got involved with education, the more I really liked working with kids. And I could see how I could change lives in that area, still get a more consistent paycheck than what you would get in broadcasting, right? But I found a little bit of a life purpose. And so, 30 years later, after my first job at Wasion High School, I still love it. And I'm kind of surprised. I always wondered, after 30 years, would you be still excited to be a part of the world of education and be relevant with kids? I like to think that I am, but I know that I love working with kids and love my job. So it just so happened life worked out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what did you ever think about, or are there ever any times where you get to scratch that itch of broadcasting? Because I'm assuming that it didn't go away, right? It's still something that you like to do. Yeah.
Well, still doing the PA games for basketball,
Yeah.
Still get to get on the mic. I mean, I would love to, in a retirement job, be the PA guy for the Mud Hens or the Walleye or something like that. So yeah, getting back to that is a part of the career perspective, because I'm thinking about my next career, because I'm could retire at 56, and that's way too young to retire, and I would drive my wife crazy. So it's all good, but we know that I can't sit still for too long. So no, I'm thinking about my next career now, and so that's something that's definitely on the plate. So I would love to do something like that.
I just saw last week that UT is looking for a PA person.
Can't do it. Not as a Falcon. Sorry. Won't. I told Connor Wallenczak, I said, listen, brother, I'll be rooting for you, but I'm not telling anybody about it, okay? But here I am on the podcast. I will hope all's well for you until you play Bowling Green.
Except one game,
that? Yeah, that's right. So no, once a Falcon, I'm not going to be switching gears.
Sure,
my kids have already asked me about that, and it's like, what if I go to UT? What if I go to Michigan? And it's like, well, that's fine. You become independent right off the bat. Don't come home. We can meet at a park somewhere. But yeah, so no, loyalty to my people.
Sure, yeah, that's good.
Falcon Nation. Yeah.
So you mentioned you were playing baseball, and that's kind of what led you to college. What position did you play?
I was a catcher, and I never played another position. I mean, I played 2 innings of first base one time in high school, but I was the chunky kid, had husky pants, and I was so back then. The kid goes behind the plate. So
my parents said they always had to make sure all my pants, jeans, everything were elastic.
Oh yeah. So, but then I ended up thinning out. But that was kind of the transition of bigger catchers like a Carlton Fisk, really big guys, Lance Parrish, and then they started to go to smaller catchers like a Mike Piazza, right? And then to Pudge Rodriguez and normal sized, because those guys are just so big. But a little bit more normal sized catchers. But I was a little bit of an unusual catcher because I was smaller. I was fast. I didn't have a great arm, but my footwork made up for it. And so just kind of maximize those tools. But a catcher who can steals base, that's really odd. So I became a little bit of a, okay, we got a catcher here who can steal. How do we put him in the mix here? How do we figure that out? So I was a little bit odd. So I caught scouts' eyes only because of that, not because I was that exceptional in any other area of the game, but I called a good game, was a wall behind the plate, and was just a smart baseball player. So what I lacked in skill, I kind of made up for in the intangibles.
Well, that's right, because you talk about even just being fast and stealing bases, because it's just one more person that they didn't expect to be able to move on the base pass. Because the catcher is like, all right, well, he's a catcher. They're probably going to bat 7, 8, 9, and we're going to have to. Someone's going to have to hit the ball over the fence to get him in. So it's an added luxury.
Yeah, my on base percentage was really probably my highest mark. My senior year, I dislocated my shoulder with 6 games left, and I was 3 walks short of the all-time walk record. So I was like, are you kidding me? I was averaging like 1.3 or 1.4 walks a game. I had 26 walks. Wow. So so I was like, just foul balls off. It's easy to foul balls off. And so once I learned how to do that, hitting became much easier, because now I'm just looking for my pitch. Because if I don't like it and it's close to the zone, I'll just foul the sucker off. So being a tough out, that all those kind of intangibles, it was like Moneyball before Moneyball. Yeah. Those were the things that, because there wasn't a lot impressive about my game, but there was something that was just kind of caught people's eye. And as it turns out, Steve Perrell, I don't know if you know Steve or not.
Yeah, I do. Yep. I umpired with I think with Griff.
Yeah. So
coached him.
I didn't know this, but he was the guy. He was scouting for Bowling Green. He was Bowling Green's assistant coach under Ed Platzer, and he was the one who saw me at Napoleon in a game, and was the one that recommended me to Ed Platzer. So he told me that story, and as it turns out, I became a little bit of a joke, because when he came back and he said, yeah, Jeff Corey, who was my friend, who was a phenomenal baseball player, they called him Kong for the King Kong home runs he would hit. So that was his nickname, Kong. But after they got done looking at Kong, he said, there's a catcher from Napoleon we ought to take a look at. And Ed's response was, there's a catcher from Napoleon? Like this no name from nowhere. And so it became this running joke. Oh yeah, sure. There's this kid from sure, you'll find another catcher from Napoleon. So I was a running joke. So I got a preferred walk on, and I walked on, and Kyle Reiser, who was a longtime baseball coach down at Elmwood, who was the assistant coach at the time, he was checking guys in. He goes, yeah, what's your name? And I said, Rick Rettig from Napoleon. I'm a catcher. And he said, hey, Ed, it's the catcher from Napoleon. So I thought, wow, I'm really something. They know all about me. How did that? So it was funny how it ended up working out. What I didn't realize is they were telling a joke at the time.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah. So, but as it turns out, I made it to the last 3, got cut in that fall, my freshman year. But then they had catchers that, and they had 5 catchers they had all on scholarship. So I had no chance of making it.
Wow.
I didn't know that at the time, or otherwise I'm down at OU because they were interested as well. And so ended up coming back in the spring, because one catcher flunked out of school, another one had a career-ending injury, and another one just got homesick. So they were down to 2 catchers. So I was basically a bullpen catcher for that spring and worked out with the team.
Yeah.
And then in the fall came back and was with the team for maybe a little bit better than a month. And I was a poor kid. I was there on a Pell Grant. So, Pell Grants only go to the kids that have need, right? So I had some pretty good need, and I couldn't have a job, So at that point, I had to realize that, hey, there comes a time, Rick. And so anyway, I made the decision to walk away, keep working in radio, keep a paycheck coming in. And so I had to make a little bit of a mature decision. Got a job as a night guard as well. So had to keep the income flowing. And that was it for baseball. So it wasn't much of a career.
Well, it's funny because as much as you were into broadcasting, I'm going to go to this broadcast school in Detroit, and this baseball, and it sounds like it was maybe a year of you at BG completely changed your trajectory of of where you're going.
Yeah, really did. Really
Yeah.
did. Well, you know what? It's interesting what happens when people really start to understand how in control of their lives they are.
Mm.
And so our kids, and I see this as a counselor, our kids and many times get told what to do, but that prevents them from thinking what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always end up posing questions in my junior appointments about, so what's next for you? And they automatically will say college. 80% of them will say that.
Yeah.
And I say, well, why college? And they say, well, get a good job, better career. And I say, oh, a career. Well, what are we talking about for a career? What is it you want to do? And they'll say, what do you mean? Well,
Is that college going to tell me?
College is not a career. Okay. That's an expensive way to make a living. You just keep on shelling out and don't have anything coming in. And so many times I think that our kids get kind of wrapped up in that, and they feel like I just have to do what people tell me to and I'll be okay. So that's another part of me being very excited about personal finance, because I get to pose the question, okay, we know what income is about. Let's talk about your skill sets and let's see if we can match your income for the type of lifestyle that you want to live. And how do you do that? And the more you're in control with your life, trust me, the more independent you are, the more happy mom and dad will be. Yeah. If you think mom and dad are on your case, well, here's a way to get them off your case. Come up with some answers.
Yeah.
Start exploring you. You should be the most interesting subject at the high school. Forget about English, forget about math, forget about any of these things. You should be the most interesting subject you have in 4 years at Perrysburg High School. And if you're not thinking about that, boy, the other pieces of the puzzle, I can understand why it's tough to connect the dots as to why is this important? Why is that important? Connect those dots, understand that you're a subject to learn about, to develop. You don't know you as well as you think you do. Ask any adult. They were not the smartest in the world when they were 16 or 17. Yep. You won't hear any adult say, I was at my best at 17 years old. And if you do, that's a pretty sad adult. Boy, I was my best at 17, but what have you been doing the last 40 years? Dear Lord, that's a sad story.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're met, all of us at all parts of our lives, learn and grow. And so anyway, once we first start to do that, I think it's really exciting to get people on that path. And maybe that's why I love education so much, because I had a great teacher, Mike Burke, who did that for me and got me on that path of independence and control. And you can do anything you want to, but you've got to put in the work. Once you really start to embrace that, happiness comes right along with it.
Yeah. And I like that you said about lifestyle, because and the few people that listen to this podcast regularly will be rolling their eyes because I always tell the story. But I talked to Scott Bucher, and he had mentioned he changed, because a lot of times it's the same thing, like, hey, what are you doing after high school, or where are you going to college after high school? Like people just assume kids are going to college. And he said he switched it and started asking kids, what lifestyle do you want to live after high school? And that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, you know, how are you happy? Be happy first, and then, get this job that allows you to do whatever you want to do on the side of it.
Yeah. The discussion we have, that's great. And he's fantastic. I love that guy. He does such great things for kids. And the discussion I have is, when you talk about happiness, understand happiness is usually pretty easy to come by. Those are the things that we're interested in. Those are the things we're engaged with. We're having fun doing them. So happiness is pretty easy. And it's really a byproduct of what's most important. And that is fulfillment. Fulfillment is so much harder to get. It's so much, you have to work to be fulfilled. And what does that mean? I'm doing what I was put on earth to do. And whether that's, teaching a class, or whether that is building a wall, or construction, or whether that's engineering and problem solving, or whatever that is, I'm really good at that. I feel fulfilled by doing that job, and I can see the purpose and how it benefits more than just me. When people stop thinking about themselves so much and start thinking about how can I engage, how can I make people's lives better, how can I do, when people get to that point where how can I do versus just thinking of how can I be happy, how can I have happy, that that can lead you down a many dark path, man.
That is very
I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
your happiness. Oh, I'm happy. Yeah, happiness is like a flirtation. Okay, that might make you happy, but true love makes you fulfilled. So when you're in love with what you do, and you find that fulfillment, that satisfaction, my goodness, everything else just takes care of itself. You'll have problems, but
Yeah.
that's like a beacon of light in the darkness. It's a lighthouse, man. Just keep on going towards that. Everything else works out.
So what makes you fulfilled with what you're doing?
Um, I think probably, and part of that, my wife and I, it's funny that you mentioned that. Part of my wife and I just had this discussion on the front porch the other day, as I'm putting together campaign signs and
Yeah.
getting amped up for my next city council run, is just being somebody that people can go to. People know that if there's an issue and I'm struggling figuring it out, this is a guy who's going to listen, who's probably going to shut up and listen, even though I'm a yapper. I surprise people sometimes and I just listen. But somebody who's reliable, somebody they can trust. That to me is filling the same vat that got filled for me when I couldn't do it for myself.
Okay.
So I kind of see myself as somebody who can be that, and maybe, in retirement, do that for more people than just the students at the high school. I love working with the students at the high school. It's great, but maybe I can do more of that after my teaching/counseling career is over. So the more I fill that need, the better I feel about who I am and what I can do. So so that's what gets me going.
That's I mean, that's perfect for why somebody would want to run for city council. I mean, for as much like I always think about politics, and I live in a township, and we have like a board that I could be on if I want to, but I have zero time anyway. But I always think about that too, because I feel the same way. Like I at work, like I like being in charge of the team and helping my team and my staff, and when they have issues, or as simple as like I said at the beginning, buying a couple weed whips and some blowers, and they're excited about it. Even though it's 90 degrees and I'm making them go weed whip, they're still excited because it's a new thing, right?
Right,
So
I helps them do their job easier. You made my life easier. Yeah.
So I like all that, but like being in government, it takes a lot of, I mean, the thickest skin you could have, right? Because everyone is either super for you and you're grateful for those people, and then the people who aren't just in the middle. They're like way on the other side, and they're just digging in, and it can be frustrating. But I think that the overwhelming sense of like, hey, I'm here to help people will try, get you over that.
Well, and you're right. And you have to have, I grew up umpiring. That was a really good college job as well. And so you have to have a little bit of an umpire's personality where you have to keep things in line. You have to watch your mouth. And not just so much of, oh, somebody might use this against me. I don't operate that way. But in the same way, I really believe that respect, when you say, they disrespected me, well, consider this. I really believe that respect is something that you give, not something that you get. So if somebody's disrespecting me or I feel disrespected, I'm not going to necessarily continue to allow that to happen, but I'm not going to disrespect. I'm not going to share that back with them by being upset, because what does that do? That just creates toxicity. And if you want to do something other than that, and I really do, then all of a sudden I'm on their playing field. No. Come to my playing field. We can talk about this. We might disagree. You might not like me, and I'm okay with that. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to shut you off. And I've had that in previous council meetings where people were legitimately upset. And, when you're up there with three people, when you're working on committees, there's some people that's like, you gotta calm them down. No, let them talk. They're passionate. Yeah. They care for the city. They wouldn't be here, take time out of their busy schedule to come to us to let us know why they're upset. They wouldn't be doing that if they weren't feeling passionate. That's a love for the city. And whatever we're doing threatens that. So let's see it from their perspective. We're a threat to them. How can we not be that threat? Or at the very least, if we're disagreeing on that, how can we still respect one another? And you've got to sometimes show them that path. So I've had people that have been very upset with me in council meetings, specifically committee meetings. But at the end of the day, I'm going to respect their thoughts. I'm going to try to say what they just said to make sure that what they said was clear. But you have to be patient and understand that people are speaking because of they're passionate, and that comes from a sense of love of the community.
Yeah.
You got to respect that love, that passion that they have. And if you do that, usually they realize that they weren't disrespected, regardless of what they said, how hard they said it. They still were respected. And if you deliver that, then you have the ability to provide a civil discourse versus these keyboard warriors you see all the time.
Yeah.
That just, it breeds on itself. It just, it's toxic. So yeah.
Was that something you had to learn, or were you like pretty like good at that when you got in there? Like, was like being understanding of everyone, understanding that they just love their city, was that like a learned thing?
I think I learned that prior to getting on.
Okay.
And so that was something that, because I've had a fiery personality. My nickname in college was Fuse, for short fuse. Yeah. Yeah. I was pretty short fused. So that going back to a baseball story, there was a situation. I'm trying out for the team, right?
Yeah.
And so we're the last three guys my freshman year. And so we get to play with the team. Okay, last three guys, because they kept one pitcher. I wasn't it. So anyway, we're trying out, and we're playing an inter squad scrimmage. I get the ball, guy's stealing, I gun him. I mean, I had this guy dead to rights, and he was one of the fastest ones in the team. I anticipated that. I saw he had a little knee flitch that told me he was going. So boom, I got him, and I nailed him. Shortstop doesn't cover. This shortstop, okay, was all MAC and didn't cover second base. So I lit into him. What in the world? I heard you were all MAC. You don't look like crap to me. Get your ass over there. So I was upset. I mean, I was. So here's this walk-on. Think of it. Here's this walk-on. I'm the leader of this team, and he's calling me out. Oh, no. So we start going at each other. We started not running, but we're talking and walking to each other. It was going to be on. Everybody pulled. Well, here's this walk-on who's almost getting into a fight with one of the team leaders in a inter-squad scrimmage. So yeah, short fused, right?
Yeah, that's great.
So, but the other side of it is I impressed the coaches that this guy doesn't back it down from anyone.
Yeah.
Now that was also pretty stupid, and I probably looked pretty stupid, but I decided that over time, the more you lose your temper, the more out of control you are, the more whoever that is that you're upset with, the more they win. And I'm pretty competitive. So why would I let somebody get one over on me? Why would I let somebody push my buttons? You can't get to me. I'm so much more hardcore than you'll ever be. Just because you can say what you say, or you know what? You be you, man. You be you. So I actually learned that over time. And I think being a school counselor, because we are counselors in the school.
Yeah.
But being a school counselor and a mental health professional allows you to iron out some of your own junk before you can help other people with theirs. So I think I learned that through that process of starting to understand really who I am, what makes me tick, and really how I want to live my life. And so I got a little bit of a taste of that before. I still have that fuse in me, but
I think it's important. That's still, well, just like you said, with the people that come and people from the community come and talk to you, it's still important to have some sort of something that fires you up, some sort of fire to keep you going.
Yeah. So you don't have to be a pushover. But the people who I admire the most have the possibility of being really dangerous people, but they don't.
Yeah.
But they hold that back. And I heard this one time, don't confuse weakness with civility. Okay. It's because if you're weak, you're incapable of doing, of being that kind of fiery person or being a threat, but the person who could be, but yet they're not. I mean, that's to me the real test of maturity, of thoughtfulness, of understanding of all the good qualities you want to be seen as, is that, can I be that? Oh yeah, I can be that. But why would I? Why would I? I'm not necessarily somebody that should be messed around with, but in the same way, I've got a spine. I'll stand up for myself. But just because I can do that doesn't necessarily mean that I should do that. And I think that somebody who Plato, I think, said this, that the people who should be in power don't look for it. Those are the people who really should have positions of leadership and positions of power. I just hope to get on council and be somebody who's a thoughtful voice, who's well-reasoned, who does his research, who comes with not just beliefs, but real-life facts, and treats everybody with a degree of respect that they deserve, and everybody deserves that. So I think that that's what I hope to contribute, just to continue to be another positive driving force. And right now, Perrysburg City Council is a really good group of people. I've got to say that. And the ballot that's coming up, I will not speak poorly about a single candidate, because there's not a candidate that isn't worthy of that position. Even Carrie Wellstein and I, who are coming in a sense, kind of new to the ballot, all those candidates have great experiences, are committed to the Perrysburg community. Perrysburg can't go wrong in this election. It's a 5-person ballot with 4 seats available.
Oh, wow.
Perrysburg can't make a bad choice. Every candidate, I think, comes at it from that perspective of how can I help the community be better, do better. And it's a great ballot. So if you don't vote for me, Perrysburg isn't a loss for that. I'm not saying don't vote for me, but I put some work into this campaign.
Oh yeah.
In the same way, I think you can pull the ballot and feel good about whomever you choose.
So the voting for this isn't in this ridiculous August election, right? Or voting time. It's in regular.
No. Yeah, it's in November 7. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's pretty hot around right now.
Oh
too.
boy,
and,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my dad explained it because I didn't realize what was going on at first. And then my dad explained, it's like, we'll realize they basically said, hey, we're not going to do this anymore, except for this one more time.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Putting it on an August ballot, it too just is, it's kind of suspect to me. So
yeah.
Why not put it in November when more people have a say? Because in August, now the other side of it is the ballot. I actually went to Wood County because I had to drop off some campaign finance forms that we're supposed to fill out in certain times. So I thought, why not vote early? So this is the first time in my life I ever voted early. I always vote on election day, but since I was there, hey, why not? Yeah. So
nice.
But the ballot box is open right now. If anybody wanted to vote, just go to the Wood County Courthouse and they'll take you even before you get into the Board of Elections. You'll go through a security. It's just off to the right, and there you go.
Nice. Awesome. Before I let you go, I do want to talk about umpiring. You mentioned that, but first of all, good luck with your city council. I think the mayor was on here too before, but I like these interviews because people don't always get to hear their leadership, like just be candid and be talking. And, especially this is an hour long where people can just talk and be who they want. I think that's important for people, especially if they, I don't know about.
You can tell I'm not necessarily trying to fully impress. I came in a t-shirt, right? So
you're a man of the people.
I was doing yard work and it's like, I got a shower. Zoe needs me here. So came in a t-shirt and here we go. Let's roll.
Yeah. But how long have you been umpiring?
Excuse me.
You said in college, right?
Yeah. When I stopped playing baseball, I picked up the mask, umpiring mask. So 24 seasons. I umpired kind of that travel circuit while I was in high school as well. But as far as high school umpiring, I did some college games as well. 24 seasons now. One
of my favorite things, and I'll probably get back into it once my kids are a little older and maybe they're not playing baseball, softball anymore, but I loved umpiring. It was so fun. Yeah. The money was good. It's from my understanding, I haven't done it in a few years now, but even that's even better, but it's a lot of fun. And I never got certified, so I only did up to like 12U or something, the travel stuff. But you learn a lot. You learn which coaches know a lot of rules when they come at you.
Yeah.
Most of those guys though that know everything, they also know to be respectful and to call time and come talk to you and that kind of stuff. The one question I had, because this was the toughest thing for me to call, and I would always hear umpires say it differently, is interference at first base. and it just happened at my son's game last night. Well, they didn't call it because nothing really happened. It probably could have been. The first baseman moved into the line to catch the ball, and then our runner really had nowhere to go, but he was out. Whatever. No one's going to argue. But what constitutes interference at first base?
Well, depending on where that first baseman stepped, if he stepped anywhere in fair territory, that's going to end up being an interference on the runner interference because he's out of that baseline.
Okay.
So at the 45 mark, in between that, if I'm doing normal high school baseball distances, but halfway in between first base and home plate, there's the 45-degree line, and that's where that lane starts, that base lane in foul territory. And the runner is allowed to come back into fair territory to touch the base only. So if he's in fair territory and he interfered with that throw, that first baseman's in fair territory, that's clearly going to be on the runner. So they have to be in that foul territory. Yeah. So that ends up being a pretty easy call. Now, the state of Ohio actually did a rules clinic this year. It was a point of emphasis where they wanted us, excuse me, they wanted us to bang that even if it didn't interfere with the throw.
Oh.
And the reason for that, if the catcher, and many times it's whatever happens behind the catcher, if the catcher gets up and throws that ball and that runner is in fair territory, it could cause the runner or the catcher to throw wide, to cause the first baseman to stretch. And if there's any other base runners on base, now instead of advancing one base, they go back to that previous base. So it becomes a more important call than what you think. Now, I don't know any umpires that if the ball's hit to shortstop and they throw over and the base runner's in that line, doesn't collide or make any contact with first baseman, I don't know any umpires are going to make that call. Yeah. But if it's the catcher, chances are I've got interference, dead ball, runner returns. So they made that as a point of emphasis this year in the state meetings. So that's a tough one.
Can you ever call a first baseman for, like, if the throw carries him into the baseline and the runner can't get to first base? Can you ever call something on the first baseman, or does that not exist?
Excuse me. Incidental contact. Yeah, there's things that can happen. Hold on one second. So
yeah, get some water, man.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Don't know what I swallowed there. Well, in that situation, actually, I had that kind of a play at the district championship in Bowling Green. Anthony Wayne was there. Throw went up the line, right?
Yeah.
And went into the runner. The runner was in a good position. The throw went into the runner, and it ended up becoming an incidental contact thing because, one, when the collision happened, it looked as if he applied the tag, but he didn't control the ball. The ball went away.
Yeah.
Now, Coach Nell from Anthony Wayne wanted me to call an obstruction call on first baseman. I didn't give it to him. He was very upset about that. But I said, you got first base anyway. Yeah, you could have had second. No, he didn't. So anyway, but no, you can have that at first base, and that really becomes a discretion kind of a call.
Yeah.
Is it play happens sometimes, and sometimes it's a play on situation. It doesn't necessarily have to, when two guys collide, doesn't necessarily have to result in an obstruction or an interference. Typically it does.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a play ball situation.
Do you like being behind the plate or in the field?
Behind the plate.
Yeah.
I'll take behind the plate all day. And being a catcher, everything just seems right back there. Okay. I am not as good on the bags, and I'll admit that I'm not as good on the bags as what I am behind the plate.
Me either. It's just, and they tell us too, like whenever we have our meeting at the beginning of the year, they, we just go over new stuff for new guys and this kind of stuff. And they even say like, hey, it's okay when you're in the field to take a second, 2 seconds, gather your thoughts, then call out safe or out. Yeah. Like you don't have to do it immediately. Like
Right.
you can think about it and then call the out. But I don't know. I just like being behind the plate a lot more too. I used to catch too. Maybe that's part of it, but
Yeah.
I just like it being back there. And I like
Yeah.
talking to the catcher. I
Hmm.
just like have all those interactions.
Right. Well, and to me, you have the ability to set the tone of the entire game.
Mhm.
The base umpire doesn't have that real responsibility, but the tone of the game is set by the plate umpire. That's why
That's a
he's
good
the
point.
umpire in chief, right?
Yeah.
So, especially if I don't know the guy I'm going to be working with, and that happens quite a bit in high school baseball, because different organizations all kind of come together. I could umpire with a guy from Fifth District or the Findlay Association or the Metro Toledo. I'm a Wood County guy. So you umpire with guys that you don't know sometimes. And if I don't know them, I got the stick.
Okay.
Just because I don't want anybody crazy back there.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that most of the calls I'm responsible for,
Yeah.
because that does set the tone. And you make a really good point too about the timing of your call. Also, in many ways, dictates the timing and pacing of the game.
Mhm.
And what's more boring than a slow-moving baseball game? It's incredibly boring. A
Yeah.
slow-moving game, even baseball people will say, this is a pretty terrible game. But and only because it's slow-moving, not because
Yeah.
it's bad play, but it's a bad game if it doesn't
Yep.
move. So as an umpire, you have the ability to affect that pacing. So yeah, as a plate umpire, you have the ability to and the responsibility to be sharp.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's a challenge.
There's nothing that gets me worked up more when I'm watching like my daughter or my son's games when the home plate umpire is not paying attention to how many warm-up pitches they get in between
Oh,
innings. I'm like,
yeah,
okay, they threw like 12 pitches. Let's get this game going now.
right. Yeah. Well, and I'm one that always give the two signal because I'm counting, and I'll do the
Yeah.
exact same thing every time when and I told this to some young umpires that like, oh, that makes sense. And I said, always go to the side of the foul line in between innings where the team is leaving the field. And they're like, why is that? I said, they're the happy guys. The happy guys are the ones leaving the field. Hey, we're out of the inning.
Yeah.
Everybody there heading in your direction is happy. You want to go to the team that just is going out to play defense? They're not nearly as happy. So go to that side, right? You're not going to get ear candy over there.
Yeah.
They're happy. You're done. You called an out. It's all good.
Yep.
So that's one thing. But also when you're standing there and you're counting pitches, just always give the, two signal to the catcher to let them know that I'm counting, right?
Yeah.
And so, and what the fans see that too. So it's like, oh my gosh, this guy's sharp. He's doing the same exact thing, the same exact time, every single time. The timing of the calls are the exact same. All of a sudden, if there's a whacker of a play or a close call, you might get a oh, but you know what? You don't get the wave. You don't
Yes.
that
Yeah.
person or that group that it doesn't cascade on itself.
Mhm.
It's like a ripple.
Yeah.
So long as you're set, professional, doing things the exact same way every single time, you hustle, right? You show interest, you talk to the players, look like you're having fun out there. Fans won't give you hardly any feedback of, oh, you're so terrible. And that just feeds on itself. So
Yeah.
and it's really not that difficult. People, I think, sometimes make it difficult on themselves.
Yeah, and it's all basically it comes down to when I used to be the director of umpires for the rec league here in Perrysburg. I used to tell them it all comes down to hustling. If you are in position to make a call and someone's going to be upset about it, but they're going to be less upset if you're in the position you're supposed to be in.
Yep.
If you're working by yourself, every play you got to take the mask off and get out from behind that plate to make a call. Obviously you're going to be further away from everything, but if you're constantly moving, looking, like you said, interested, knowing that you want to make the right call, then it's going to be a lot less because they see you working back there.
And it's amazing how many compliments you end up getting.
Yep.
I get so many, and this isn't pumping me up, but I just think if you're professional and engaged and whatever, you're going to get, hey, thank you and great job. And because people are very appreciative of the fact without you don't have a game.
Yeah.
And I think that the state of Ohio and the National Federation of High School Athletics has done a really great job of letting people know, hey, fans, you're being turkeys and you're
Yeah.
running people away from the game who allow the game to happen. Because if you don't have an official, you don't have a game. So if you
Mhm.
care so much for your kids, care for the game, care for the people who are making the game happen. So I think there's a lot of good momentum from an administrative standpoint of people who are overseeing these sports, really educating fans to say, hey, one, they're humans too, but they're the ones making the game happen. So let's treat them with some respect. So
Yeah. And any sport that I'm a coach of, I cannot tolerate my fans saying stuff to the umpires. And it even happened, sometimes this season where I would turn to a parent and I would just look at him and go, hey, we got it. And then we would talk to the umpire, especially if I know the umpire's doing a really good job and like, yeah, it's one call, we'll talk to him. But I cannot stand parents like just and usually they understand that I used to be an umpire and I coach a lot of sports and I used to officiate football, like all this stuff. So like when I noticed that, like that's one thing I'm not gonna deal with, because I would tell, when I was an umpire, I would tell coach, like, hey coach, you better get your fans in line, or that particular person in the red hat, otherwise I'm throwing him and you out of here. Like, and then the coach would go take care of it. But that's the one thing that really bothers me too.
Yeah. So but outside of that, I mean, you, so long as you know what you're doing, I mean, you can even make a mistake on a call. I actually made a mistake on a call this past year, a book rule. I made a mistake on it, and the coach challenged me on it. And I said, well, it's throwing to an unoccupied base, right? So I called a ball because the kid threw to an unoccupied base, kid going from first to second. He did a turn throw, a flip throw to second base, and I called a balk on that because it was unoccupied. But actually, the rule states, and I messed it up, that if the runner is stealing, the pitcher can throw to an unoccupied base to drive back the runner. It's the second part of that rule.
Okay.
And so and he said, well, what is he supposed to do? And I said, if he steps off, he can run at him. He can do anything. And he goes, but that's not the rule. And I said, from my standpoint, it's always been the rule. Well, I went back and I checked the rule. Oops.
Yeah.
So
hey, that happens, right?
But I emailed the coach and I said, coach, one, you were right. Two, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the argument, because you argued it. Not only were you right, but you did it in a way that didn't embarrass me as an umpire. You weren't going to get your way anyway, but
yeah.
But you respected the game, and you respected the people who make the game work. And I actually sent that email to him and his principal.
Oh, nice.
To make sure that they understand that, one, I was at fault. I'm owning it. But the coach down at Fostoria and the principal and the AD all knew that, hey, our coach is doing it the right way. So that I think that ownership, even though I would rather have made the right call, I think that reflected well on Fostoria. It reflected well on the umpiring profession, even though I boned it. So that's a positive move. And so that's the kind of things good umpires do. So if there are people listening who are considering that, do things like that.
Yeah. Well, Rick, I really appreciate you coming on here. But before I let you go, there's one more thing I do. It's a quick video only segment. Okay. I have this box of questions.
I hope I don't cough through that one too. I mean, geez, oh Pete, I was losing a lung here for a while.
That's right. I never say the name of this game because I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble. I don't think I'm popular enough to get in trouble yet, but it's just a box of questions.
Okay.
There is 3 kinds of questions. There is icebreaker, deep, and deeper. If we do it in person, I have them person pick them, but since obviously we're not in person, so I'll just pick a card. The only thing I tell you, if you get an icebreaker, you have to do another one, because icebreakers are like, what's your favorite color or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I'll pick one here. I'll read the question here. We'll end the podcast, and then I will come back on and you'll answer the question. So
okay, all right.
Pull one out. All right, you got the middle, which is a deep question. Okay. So your question is, have you gone or would you go to a psychic or medium? If you've been, what did they say? Has it come true? So again, you can think about that. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Everyone go over to the YouTube channel to see Rick's answer to this question. Again, the question was, have you gone or would you go to a psychic or medium? If you've been, what did they say? Has it come true? everyone vote for Rick. Rick, thanks again for coming on
Thanks.
here. It was really awesome. I really enjoyed talking to you about umpiring, and just I think it's important to hear adults talk about college isn't always the answer. There's many ways to do things. Find your happiness, what fulfills you. So thanks for sending those great messages.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. Hey, I really appreciate being on. I've still got your sticker, by the way, on my refrigerator.
Oh, nice.
I've got the Nerdball podcast on my refrigerator. I go there often because that's where the refreshments are in the garage. So thanks for the sticker.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for checking out this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're hearing this, on any of the podcatchers. On YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We're coming at you 2 times a week now, audio and video. Check us out on all the social medias. Just search the Nerdball Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're out there. Gmail is the nerdballpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to shoot us an email, we'd be happy to get back to you. Thanks to Real JP Multimedia, Cuttlefish Graphics, Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab, and Big Daddy Graphics for helping out the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.